Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Maria, the Marketing and Creative Manager here at Hasmark, and I'm joined by the lovely Jen, our Director of Publishing and Marketing. Today, we have the joy of chatting with our author, Jane Wicks, and the fabulous illustrator, Ken Forbes. So, having the pleasure of witnessing Jane and Kenny work so masterfully in the and the various shades of grief, to be honest, you'll get to see just how important it is to bring these more difficult and depth-like conversations to the surface. You'll find Jane has this beautiful, free spirit and an enormous ability for using grief as a launch pad to bring more joy, not only for herself as she moves through it, but for literally everyone around her. And as for her illustrator, Kenny's art pulls from the depths, and it's such a perfect complement to bring awareness to what it means to move with and through grief as well. So the cool thing is that Kenny typically paints with coffee and chocolate, and he pivoted a little bit to a completely different technique because obviously going from painting to illustrating a book in print is quite different. But it is quite amazing how everything turned out so beautifully to tell the story inside the Green Goddess and the gift of grief. So without further ado, welcome Jane, welcome Kenny.
Hello, hello.
So the first question is always the one that I'm curious about the most. Why did you need to write this book? Like, what is it in your journey of grief that this needed to come out?
Thank you, Anna. Where do I begin? I think the best way to start is to say out loud that I was suffering terribly. At the age of 58, I was in a very dark place, very unhealthy, overweight, drinking daily, angry, feeling scared all the time. And I've lost people in my life, and I did not always consider, in fact, I rarely considered the fact that that pain that I was experiencing was a result of the losses that I have experienced up until that point. I lost one of my brothers in 2000. He was sick and poor and had no access to health care and died quite suddenly and quickly. I lost another brother in 2017 to a suicide as a result of a suicide. I'm not even sure if I like the way I just said that. I lost my brother. He took his life. And these were losses on top of a lifetime of losses. There were various times as a little girl where I felt like I lost my mother as a result of some significant mental health challenges that she was experiencing. At the age of 10, my family got evicted from a house that we lived in, and so I lost my home, and I lost friends. I also felt that very often I was losing myself in darkness. And at 58, I was in a place where I realized that I was hitting what I consider to be a bottom of a very slow descent into darkness. I'll use that phrase again. I've now been in therapy for 7 years, and the work that I do with my therapist and really with myself has taught me so much about who I am and my relationship to my own life. And I understand that I was choosing the pain because I wasn't looking at the pain and I was allowing the pain to be the entire story. And I have spent the last 7 years looking, searching, uncovering, feeling, and owning my story, and really getting to a place of understanding that it was always about love, and that grief is love. And I felt very clearly that I have experienced what I've experienced for the whatever reasons I experienced them, and that I meant in some way to use those experiences to help. Truth being that grief is universal, and that seems to be the only way in which I can make any sense out of it, is deciding that I'm meant to do something from the learnings that I have had, not only over the course of the last 7 years, but truly over the course of the last now 64 years.
That's so amazing because I dare say that to make the leap from understanding grief and its very heavy feelings sometimes when you don't really know how to relate to it and how to even commune with it, that it's actually love, to make that leap is very difficult. So I love that you did choose to speak about it with the world and in your book.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
Um, Kenny, what made you say yes to illustrating Jane's book?
Why did I say yes to illustrating Jane's book? Well, I mean, outright, just her energy, her passion, her vision, and also she's somebody that I love very much. Um, Jane has known me the entirety of my life. I guess I knew her too, respectively. She's my brother-in-law's sister-in-law. But despite knowing her for so long, we really didn't get close until a few years ago, maybe 7-ish years ago. Um, and it was because we found ourselves both at the same point in our healing journey, in our growth journey. Um, you know, I haven't had the easiest life. Jane hasn't had the easiest life at times. It's that's just how life is. And I was finally at the point where I was tired of looking at shortcuts or escapism. I wanted to put in the work, through therapy, through proper healing, and turn that grief into a gift, turn those tribulations into trophies. And Jane was, kind of not only a partner in crime on this journey, not only a shoulder to cry on, but she was also like a North Star and a beacon on how to get there and how to get to this better version of myself. Um, and so being somebody that I fell more in love with, I wanted to be there for her in this project and this journey. Then when she described what it was going to be about, again, her passion, I'm like, hell yeah, let's ride. But it was also something that I needed for myself. You know, when she had asked me, I had actually just had the pretty tragic loss of my dream job, and the scary pivot of the unknown, what's going to happen in the future. I had nothing, lined up, and it was kind of all right. Are you going to roll the dice and be a full-time artist and go for this other dream, even though you have no clue how it's going to manifest and what's going to happen. And I was actually going through the loss of a relationship and someone who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with as well. Fast forward into, phase, 3, 4 of publication, I lost one of my closest friends that I grew up with. And the book, became something very healing for me that I needed in order to get through that time. And then ultimately, the book is something that everybody needs. As Jane has said, grief is something where we all come in commonality. And it's also very common that we don't know how to process that, and we don't know how to use the tools or what tools to look for. And it's a scary journey to have to dive into. And so it was just something that, I felt the world needs, and the universe put this into her lap and in my hands to try to manage as well. And so I said, what's the worst that can happen? And as Ella says, what's the best that can happen? And here we are.
I love that so much. I remember talking to Jane, and there was zero doubt that you were her person for these illustrations. It was sure as, the sun rising in the east.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned Ella in the book, and her voice is so powerful, and you both captured that in such an incredible way. And I wanted to ask, out of the many points of view or the ways you could have gone about it, why did you feel it was important to go specifically through her eyes and through her point of view as she's moving through it, through her perspective, I suppose?
Yeah, I gave this question a lot of thought, Anna Maria, and the simple answer is that I am Ella. And the longer answer is that for most of my adult life, I have felt like a 10-year-old girl. I mean, that's just the truth. In an adult body, but up in here, I have felt more often insecure, scared, hoping someone would take care of me, angry, full of doubt, all covering it with an attitude of, I got this. I I know that I got stuck at 10. My world changed significantly at 10. I had no tools, and so I hid 10-year-old Jane and morphed into the Jane that needed to survive. Controlling Jane, hiding Jane, driven Jane, shielding Jane, accomplishing Jane. And I lived that way for the next 48 years. I lived through tons of pain and loss, and I was stuck. And Ella is stuck. And I wanted Ella to get unstuck. I wanted Ella to get unstuck earlier in her life, that she could go on to be the best version of herself that she could be, and that she could live her life through a lens of love versus a lens of pain. Knowing that way in which one lives a life through a lens of pain, I don't wish that for anyone. And so my hope was for Ella to step aside and get out of her own way and get unstuck so that she could go on and have this magical, beautiful, beautiful life that she's worthy of having.
And I love how you speak of tools, because there's many and there's not many all at the same time. We don't know where to look. And for everyone watching, look in the book because it is so potent the way you actually shared her perspective. It makes it so intimate. When reading it as from her eyes, you can relate 1,000,000% to what she's going through, and it gives you that internal like start of your engine almost to keep going.
Yes, 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 yes. I agree with you, Anna Maria. The tools are hard to find out there. They are hard. They're there. It's just, I know that we'll talk a little bit later on about culturally and societally. It's not the world in which we live. And we all have a responsibility for saving ourselves. And writing this through Ella's eyes was really the only option.
And for everyone who does not know, who is Ella?
Who is Ella? So Ella is a 13-year-old girl who is going through a rough few days and comes upon some magic and decides to muster up the courage and curiosity to go on her own quest
And I think that's what we all need. A little bit of courage and a bit of an open mind to do something different than what you're currently doing because it ain't working.
It
That's
is
it.
not working for Ella. We find that very quickly that she is in a place of pain, and she has an opportunity that she, without revealing too much, decides to seize.
One of the themes Alice speaks to is the silence around grief, the way people stop talking about loved ones who have died. Do we think as a culture shy away from these conversations? Do you think we as a culture shy away from these conversations?
I'd like to go back, if we can, in the telling the story through Ella's eyes. Can I talk about that?
Of course.
Um, so I wanted to reflect the story, being through Ella's eyes in the illustrations as well. I felt like that was really important. Um, the illustrations aren't hyper real. I typically paint with coffee and cacao, but I use abstraction. I never use anything that's hyper realistic. I don't want it to look like a photo, because if the images and illustrations are too real in the book or a painting, but namely in the book, then the story becomes about that person, and it becomes more difficult to put yourself in that situation and to wear those shoes. It was very important that everybody can put themselves in this situation and empathize and sympathize and kind of transfer those tools in that journey that Ella's going on. I also wanted, it to be almost a little childlike, or for a child to feel like they actually drew it and they're telling this story and they're living in this story, because ultimately that's what we're doing. Um, I also wanted I didn't want each scene for her to look cookie cutter in the same way for the same reason. I wanted it to be a little bit different, to shake it up so you can slide yourself in there, whether you're 220 or 200. We're all dealing with these things. And so we're looking at this story through the lens of Ella, but we're also looking at ourselves. It's, a microscope, but it's also a mirror at the same time. And so having a little bit of abstract fun, and a lack of hyperrealism in the illustrations allows, us to be a part of that story because, like Jane said, she's Ella, I'm Ella, we're all Ella. Cool.
Yeah. Yes. One of the themes Ella speaks to is the silence around grief, the way people stop talking about loved ones who have died. Do you think we as a culture shy away from these conversations?
Yes. I had no tools. And we spoke about tools earlier, and I had no tools. I had no language, and I know I am not unique in that. Culturally, we are so uncomfortable with grief and loss and sadness and pain. Get over it, move on. And grief is love. Grief is about having loved, and it is universal. And I believe that owning our story, our pain, our loss, and our love can change the energy of the universe. I spent years pushing aside my pain because others felt uncomfortable. And the pushing, the shoving, the numbing ultimately causes only one person harm, and that is me. And so I now give myself permission. I give myself permission to feel it, all of it, all of it, and then go on with the business of living.
Love that. Go on with the business of living.
Couldn't-
That's
Um, I fully empathize with Jane, and I agree. People are absolutely scared to bring up what kind of journey or grief or trauma or help, that they need. As the person who's dealing with this situation, you don't want to bring it up to anyone else because you don't want to bother them or make them feel uncomfortable. And when you are on the other side and you have a loved one or a friend, maybe even a stranger who's going through an event or dealing with grief, sometimes you feel like it's never the right time to bring it up, or you don't want to force them to go through a healing if they're not ready. But I mean, I speak in metaphors. And so the funny thing about, your dirty laundry is if you keep pushing it down and pushing it deeper into the hamper, it's never going to get clean. And in fact, it's just going to stink up the rest of the hamper at some point. So you have to, hit it head on. You have to put in the work and go through the pain to get to the healing. And so being quiet just makes the uncomfortable voices get louder.
I love that. Being quiet makes the uncomfortable voices get loud and louder. Yeah. I wanted to make sure we also talk about Ella's note at the beginning because we talk about grief and loss, but it can come in so many different forms. And we've touched on it a little bit. Kenny, you shared a loss of a dream job. It doesn't have to be a loss of a loved one necessarily. So, in all the different shapes and sizes, from divorce, addiction, moving, even your loss of innocence, what is the common thread that you have found that unites them all that can help you move towards that, that healing bit and not stay stuck?
Yeah, loss is loss is loss. It feels bad. It feels awful. And it feels that way because we loved something, whether it's a dream job or a neighborhood filled with your little childhood friends, or your mother, or an addicted sibling who no longer interacts with you in the same way that they did when you were younger. And so the loss of that person is there, even though that person is actually physically in the room with you. It feels awful. And it's because we loved. And the common thread or the common theme is that we've got to look at that pain that we are experiencing and see it as love. Because that seeing it as love will shift the entire sense of the experience that one had. And so, if I were to summarize the common thread, it's understanding why we feel so much pain, and that it is grief, and that grief is love. If we didn't love or care, we'd be going on our merry way. And the truth is that universally, we all love something at some point in our life. And because nothing lasts forever, and that is a real truth, we will all, at some point in our life, experience loss, and it will feel bad. And so getting to that place of looking and owning that pain and that experience can shift all the energy around that pain and loss to love, acceptance, and again, a different caliber of energy that we put forth in the world. And I want to change that to a different quality of energy, a different quality of energy. The energy has a different quality to it. I still have lost all the things I have lost today. It's all still the same as it was 8 years ago. My brothers are gone. I really lost that life I had as 10-year-old Jane. I really lost people to addictions. And yet, the shift in perspective that I have on those losses and the realization that that loss began with love has changed me entirely, energetically, attitudinally, and attitudinally. Yes, 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 yes.
Through the different types of losses, addiction, dreams, family, friends, pets, you know, these experiences are different, and who it may be with, again, family member, a loved one, a romantic partner, the experiences are different between us, but the feelings are the same. We will all have the feelings of sorrow, anger, grief, disbelief, feeling like the world's going to end, feeling like things will never be the same. And that's one of the things that we have in common. Most importantly, each one of these feelings in these journeys between these different people is valid, because one person's going through one thing at one point doesn't, you know, make any validation of anybody else's journey any less or any more. So however you're feeling, you know, that's okay. And I think that's part of the journey in giving yourself that allowance.
Excellent. What do you hope readers will feel or perhaps rediscover within themselves after they finish The Green Goddess and The Gift of Grief?
We are not alone. We are not alone. Grief is where we overlap. Owning our grief and our love, sharing it with others that feel the same way, super powerful, super powerful. The story is powerful. The sharing of the story is powerful. The owning of the story is powerful. The looking at the story is powerful. The giving ourselves permission to understand ourselves and to be in touch with the truths about our lives that have impacted us in ways that we have no way of knowing unless we look. And the love that came first, before the grief, gets shoved away and put aside and numbed and lives at the bottom of that hamper unless we take it out and air it out and look at it and understand that there's so much that fills our heart with that love. And that's why we feel this grief. The opening ourselves up to that will open ourselves up, yes, to the pain of the grief, but also to all the goodness that's right on the other side of it that we haven't owned and made part of us because of that pushing aside. So what I hope happens is that readers give themselves permission to look, to feel, to own their story, and to remember that they are not alone. None of us are alone in experiencing grief.
In reading this book, in experiencing this book, either by yourself with a loved one, you know, I hope people can realize the gift and give themselves space and grace. I'll say that again because I want to make sure everybody gets it. In your journey, especially with grief, give yourself space and grace. Grace to forgive yourself for whatever you did or however you were feeling, because it's all valid and it's part of the journey. And give yourself that space to let the medicine hit, to do the work and get the healing, because it doesn't happen overnight. Um, and I hope that we can realize in experiencing this journey and the space and grace that with the love, you'll find yourself a better version of yourself, and then we'll all be better together.
And if we're open, we will see those safe spaces out there. And those safe spaces will appear to us once we are willing and open to take a look. And in the book, we didn't talk a whole lot so far about the Green Goddess. The Green Goddess is an equally important character in the story, and really can be defined as this safe space that becomes available to Ella. And there may have been many safe space opportunities that came to Ella along the way. And today, on this particular Tuesday, when she really realizes that she cannot continue this way anymore, this safe space comes to her and she has a choice. And it's the classic hero's journey, right? I mean, she gets to go into the dark cave if she wants to. And you'll read the book and you'll see the choices that she makes.
We can't wait for the book to come out. So I know it's coming out this January 2026.
It is.
And a copy.
Yep.
We will make sure that we have all of the links for you, Jane, and for you, Kenny. It'll be somewhere up, down, or on the sides of this video so that you can connect with Jane's beautiful work, Kenny's incredible art. I do encourage you to check that out and read the book alongside. It's just incredible what you both have been able to take such a big, heavy topic and put it into something that is quite special when you read the book. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming and joining us and sharing about your experience in writing your book.
Yes, this has been a real pleasure. I hope that you'll go out and buy this book and give yourself permission to explore. It's essential. and it has been essential for my mental health, physical health, and spiritual health. And the looking, there really is no other way.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of you with us today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Your future self thanks you as well.